Hello friends, my name is RagePanda1 and we are here today with our male Bjornekriger build guide. If you happen to be a member of my Discord, then you already know that I love this guy, and if you are waiting for my video to say whether these guys are good or they're bad or if you should summon or wait, I think you should summon. I really do, and the reason is because these warriors are fantastic. Now, I always tell people that it's a good idea to not have any more than 2 people on your team that are not doing damage, and I say that it's a good idea to have at least 2 people that are taking damage. Well, the wonderful thing here is that these characters take damage, they deal damage, and they do amazing control effects to the enemy team. I'm not going to talk too much about the female in this video, but what I am going to do in this video is I'm going to give you a couple of builds that you can work with, depending on if you're a newer player or a more advanced player, and I'm going to base those things around champion selection and trait availability, because I know that even though some of the best traits might be on clan traits, not everybody's got access to that. For our first build, we're going to be using the Bruiser build, which is what I call the combination of brutal, aggressive, steadfast, and energetic or honorable. You're going to make the decision on those last traits based on whether or not you're running healers. If you have extremely strong healing, then you're going to take honorable. If you do not have extremely strong healing, you're going to stick with energetic because it's just better in that situation. Now, the reason that I think that this is the best build on this character is because his crowd control is absolutely enormous. Not only is he freezing people constantly and making them take more damage, but he's also going to leap around the map. And the fact that he's leaping around the map and crowd controlling people means that he's going to live long enough to make it to the next steadfast shield before he's even actually taking all that much damage. Especially if you run him with a little extra sustain to cover the gaps, he ends up becoming an incredibly tanky warrior, not necessarily because he's taking so much more damage than everybody else could possibly take, but he's preventing more damage than more people can prevent. Being on a new account myself, I don't have all of the pieces to put this particular team together, but I do think that it's an extremely strong team, and I'm going to tell you why. I think that using both of the bears, both Bjornekriegers, both of the Akunas, and a male Water and Sun would be an absolutely ridiculous team in combination with each other. And there's a lot of subtle details here that make that a good combination. Even though it seems like an easy build, all you gotta do is get a couple of clans and then you're good to go. Well, the reason is because the male Akuna is basically the best friend of the male Bjornekriger. A lot of people will end up doing their active skills and their ultimates around a similar time. And the beautiful thing here is that the male Akuna seems to cover the stuns exactly when the male Bjornekriger is not getting his stuns off, and it leads to the enemy team just barely being able to play. On top of that, with the male Akuna, you're going to be getting some healing onto your character, which is going to cover those gaps like I was talking about before. When I made my first look guide, I said that I wasn't sure if the freezing aura timing was going to be sufficient that it would make the skill just okay, or if it would make it extremely strong. I'm of the opinion now that it is extremely strong. You're not going to constantly have everybody on the map stunned, but it is going to do a lot of work. And in fact, the reason that I think that this team that I've suggested is so good is because it's so versatile. Not only is it going to dominate in PvP, but it's also going to do really well in boss modes and event modes, and that's what you really want when you're looking at a team that you're going to be using as your primary squad. Another concern that I had about this character was that the activation time on Tundra Tremor looked like it was a little bit longer than you might want in the video that I watched that was released by Bloodline themselves on their official YouTube channel, but when I'm actually using the character, I don't feel that at all. This ability feels impactful, and I feel like I'm getting my value out of it every time. And the beautiful thing is that when you knock somebody up, you're interrupting everything they're doing, you're keeping them stuck in both of your frozen zones, and then they end up frozen by the time they get to move anyway. So it turns this ability into actually a crowd controlling monster, and it's much more impressive than you might think just by reading it. Unfortunately, there is one small lack of synergy that exists in the team that I've suggested, but I don't think it's enough to break the team's value by any means at all, and that is, on his ultimate, he does a huge knockback. Now, if you're using the team that I suggested, you're going to be pulling a lot of people into the same area with the female. He's going to knock everybody up, and then he's going to jump and do considerable amounts of damage. Most of the people that are on this team aren't really going to care that you did knockbacks. That's one of the reasons why they're so good together. The female Bjornekriger kind of cares about that, and it can reduce the damage that she does a little bit. But the thing is, we're doing so much damage with everybody on the team that if we lose, I don't know, 10% of her damage, we're not really losing that much. And by having her on the team, we're getting a lot of anti-heal from her and the male Akuna that is really going to counter the meta teams right now. And that's one thing that people don't always consider, is countering the meta teams, because that's what you got to do if you want to win in the top. You got to be countering what people are actually using. Another reason that we love the male Akuna with this guy, I honestly think that if you're running one, you should be running the other if you can at all, is because when we look at his ultimate, he's going to empower his frozen zone, and he's going to increase that duration if he's getting enemies to be immobilized. I do believe that includes stuns and frozen effects, and the male Akuna is freezing people just as much as this guy is, so all in all you end up with an even more effective ultimate just by having a friend on the team. I imagine I don't have to explain why I'm putting male Water and Sun on the team. He's a little bit overpowered, and that's why the developers have been doing the sorts of changes that they've been doing. They nerfed Devout because it was probably overperforming, because the male Water and Sun is extremely strong, maybe too strong. And they've been putting anti-heal on multiple champions releasing from new clans. And the great thing is, they make those new clans work so well together, and they're on a theme! They're all themed together, even with the male Water and Sun. You get your 4 ice people and a water person. What more could you want? And many people think that maybe the female Akuna isn't that strong, and I think that might be because they don't fully understand how she works. But in this team where you're running 2 strong healers, an incredible amount of crowd control, and all the other goodies that you've got, she's going to be replacing her shields with health extremely often. And when she's doing that, she's increasing the damage that she does exponentially. That's right, exponentially. So we're already building into a sustain team. We're elongating the battle a little bit by just using a bunch of CC. We have 2 healers so that we're going to win the battle of attrition, and that's going to give her time to reach her full potential. And if for some reason you weren't going to beat the team anyway, she's going to come through in the end and absolutely rock people. On top of that, she's increasing our sustain and giving us extra shields that give extra damage in the right situations, and it just adds up to making all of our team more on an equal playing field rather than having 3 burst mages and a couple of people supporting that. Personally, right now I'm using both Bjornekriegers and both Akunas. Unfortunately, I don't have a male Water and Sun or any other good healer, so I'm going to be using male Aeson. And the reason I'm doing that is because all of the rest of my team is doing a ton of damage, his passive is buffing all of that, and I'm still getting a little extra sustain from the shields that he's throwing out. It seems to be working out okay for now, but I will be looking to replace him as soon as I can. Hopefully I can demonstrate a little bit of this synergy by going into a battle against somebody who's a bit stronger than I am. And you're going to start seeing people freezing all over the place, especially on the right side of the screen right now. Everybody's just standing in it. And here comes the freezes, ladies and gentlemen. It looks like an even fight, until it's not anymore, because they don't get to play. So I know that's kind of a quick example, but it's the sort of thing that you're going to see happening. Imagine if I also had a strong healer on that team. It would not have even been close. And I was fighting somebody that was much higher power than I am at the current time. Being a shorter battle, you can see that we didn't get any activation out of our female Akuna on that one. But if the battle had continued to go on and she got to meet her full potential, you would have seen some slightly different numbers there. In fact, I can put one up on the screen right now that gives you an idea of what I'm talking about. Another issue that I have with my team is that I don't have all of the books in the world just yet. We're still working on that, being a new account, and that means that I've had to sacrifice some things for testing purposes right now. I have sacrificed the male Aeson's ultimate. It's not as high level as I would want it to be, so that's why he looks like he's not doing damage in this particular example. If the slight lack of synergy that you see between the male and the female makes you not want to use them together, you can honestly replace her with any character that's going to take some damage to their face, and it'll be just fine. Maybe you love your female Lionstone still. That would be fine too. Maybe you've gotten some of the more recent tanks or warriors and you want to try putting them in. Honestly, that one slot is not going to matter at all because you already have just about everything covered in this build. However, I think that her bringing the anti-heal plus the damage and all the other good stuff makes her a really solid choice here. Plus, it makes it a simpler build because if you're able to build the male, you probably have the companion if you're all the way at the 15-star mark, which means you can eventually build her too, and you don't have to worry about it or go out of your way. But the team that I've just suggested and the traits that I suggested with it do require a little bit of advanced age on your account to have everything available. What if you're like me and you just don't have that stuff available? Well, that's why I've gone for this build, which is basically the basic build, and I call it that because you don't actually need any other special clan traits. It's just brutal, fierce, energetic, and honorable. It's a nice mix of being tanky and doing extra damage, and it's going to treat you very well. Honestly, you can use this build on just about anybody, but particularly people who are going to be up in the front line and doing damage, it's a fantastic build on them, and it's why my guy is performing as well as he is. And since I'm making more of an early game build here, I don't want to focus on any other clans that you might need to get an event for. Maybe you just started this week and you summoned on these guys and you've got some basic units laying around. What do you really need to look for to make the best team for you? In my opinion, you need to watch out for things that are doing ground targeted attacks that take a long time to activate. An example of that would be the Zace clan. On their ultimates, they set down the ultimate, and then after a delay, it will finally do its damage. Generally, people already don't like this clan because of that feature, but when you have somebody who's doing big knockbacks, you really don't want this. Same is true for the male Ignis. He can really miss out on a lot of damage because this guy is knocking people back. I would also avoid the female Ugrel in combination with this guy for the same reason. You don't want to knock people out of her ultimate and then she doesn't heal, and because she doesn't heal, she's dead on the ground. Not a good synergy there. What we do want to look for is people who are going to hit their abilities no matter where the enemy is at on the map, and we do have some good examples of that. Female Ignis, as opposed to the male Ignis, will actually hit a lot of people with her ultimate, even if they're spread out, even if they're getting knocked around. It doesn't matter. Her ult bounces in between enemies rather than targeting an area on the ground. Even better still is a male Aeson whose ult just hits everybody. Just straight up everybody. And on top of that, he's also going to be increasing all of our strength by 30%, and since we're making it so our frontliners are doing a bit of damage in this build, that's actually going to be even more useful than it normally is, and it's normally real good. The Fulgur clan also has ultimates that are just going to hit everybody, and they don't care where everybody is. They also tend to do a lot of damage, and they stayed extremely relevant for a very long time. They're not bad now, there's just newer, more exciting options that people wanted to pursue, but as far as characters go, these ones are a great combination. They also have the added benefit of having the hulking trait naturally on them. This is going to increase all your champion strength by 5%, and then after 10 seconds, it's going to start ramping up and getting stronger and stronger. Combining this with the male Aeson can increase the strength of your team so much that it's so underrated, and we're going to talk about that in a future video. But if you're doing an early game team and you're not sure exactly what you need to have on the team, you cannot go wrong with a Fulgur, although the male is easier to use than the female. A bit of an early game hidden gem is the male Karguk. Surprisingly, he can actually do some functioning damage, which is not something you would usually associate with the early game frontliners. And since we're building a team right here where we're trying to do a lot of damage, and we're trying to boost that damage as much as we possibly can, it makes sense for us to use another guy like this. Realistically, I would rather have the female Bjornekriger, but I didn't want to use the same champion again, that's too boring. The main ability that we really like here, aside from all of the extra ones that add damage, is that we're getting a taunt. And by taunting people, we're going to reduce the damage that's taken on our team, and we're not actually using a lot of sustain on this team because it's early game and the options are very thin on the ground. And yes, I know this is going to be a contentious pick. It's a little bit spicy. Some people, some high-level players realize how strong he is, and they actually were using him way back in the endgame content, but he's a bit outclassed by some of the newer additions to the game. When you get some of those, you might replace him, but we're building early game, baby. So far, we have our male Bjornekriger, we've got our male Karguk, those are going to be our frontliners. We're going to go for the male Aeson and the male Fulgur, and then we're going to take the female Tidestorm. She can be very annoying in a lot of teams because she has a pushback, but we're already building to avoid that. We may as well take advantage of the huge damage numbers that she puts out, and she does increase damage to people who have negative effects on them. Of course, our male Bjornekriger is constantly exuding negative effects to everybody on the battlefield almost, and so she's going to take huge advantage of that. I think this team would be very competitive. I think you're going to be disrupting the enemy team a lot more than you think you might be, and as far as the early game is concerned, I think you're just going to dominate with this. The reason is because we have synergy with every character that's been added to the field, and that's really all you need. One thing that I want everybody to take away from this video is that when you're talking to each other on the forums and you're talking about what's the best and who's the best, it's very important to remember that everybody is at a different point in the game and they may not have access to all of quote-unquote the best things. And their version of the best thing might be different than your version of the best thing. So the best thing that we can do is talk about it together, figure out the best strategies, and I love to do that over on my Discord, the link for which is in the description below. If anything that I've said here today has helped you out, then please do like and share the video. I love it so much and you make me a happy panda. But for now, I want to thank you for watching. I have been Rage Panda 1 and I will see you in the next one.